Hello, on this video I want to talk about date time, and also the Python time zone. When you look at the Python documentation for date and time, you can see that you can do just about anything you want to do with this library. It's a very extensive library and full of functionalities. But for this video, I'm just going to talk about a few of them. So let's start writing some code, and I'm going to start with putting all the imports first. And the last one here is for the time delta. We're going to use this to modify the time. And here's the documentation of the code that I'm about to write here. So first I'm going to go over the date. So here I'm creating a variable, and then date, which is the import that I did here in the top. And then .today, I just get the today's date. And then I print the today's date. And then within the today's date, you can get the year, the month, or the day. So I'm going to run this. And here I get the complete thing, the year, the month, and then the day. So it's very simple. The next thing is to create a date with a specific date instead of getting for today only. So in this case here, I'm creating a date that's on year 2000, month January, and date 31st. So if I run this, I get that date. Now, once you have a date, you can also add days or weeks or years to that date. So let's write some code now to add some days to the date. So here I'm getting the date that I created right here on line 15, and then I'm going to add 10 days to it. So January 31st plus 10 days gives you February 10th. You can also add weeks to your date. So here's the code on line 23. That's very similar to adding the days, but now I'm adding weeks instead of days. So let's run this code here. So once I added 10 weeks, then I'm going to end up on April 20th. Now, what if I want to add years to that? So if you want to add years to that, then it's a little bit more complicated. And the reason it's complicated is because we do have the leap year problem here. So there are a couple of ways that we can add years. So one of them is to just plain add 365 days to your date. So if you add 365 and I'm multiplying this by 1, this calculation here is useless at this point. However, if I want to add 2 years, I just multiply by 2 here and so on. But the whole point here is that you add 365 days to your date. Now, 365 days are not the representation of 1 year all the time because of the leap year. But this is one way for us to do that. So if you add that amount of days into your date, now you end up on 2001 here. All right, so the next way for you to do that, instead of just adding the 365 days, is for you to just replace the year. So in this case here, I'm getting the date, and then I'm replacing the year with my current year plus 1. So here, no matter what, you're going to get the year and you're just going to add 1 to it. So regardless of leap year or not, this will move you from, let's say, May 1st, 2000 to May 1st, 2001. If you add the 365 days, then depending on the leap year, you may or may not get the same month and date of the following year. And the third way for you to move your year is just by recreating the date. In this case here, I'm getting the date, and then I'm calling the date function again to create a new date. Then the parameters I'm passing is the date year, the my date year plus 1 year. In other words, I want to go to the next year. Then I pass the original month and the original date. So I create a new date, and I'm just passing next year's value right here. So if I run this, now I end up in 2003. All right, so let's move on to the next topic. I'm gonna do a little bit of cleanup here. And the next topic is formatting. Now, if I go to this website here, which is the string formatting, you're gonna see that you have a couple of functions right here. I'm gonna be using this one here. And right here on the directive, you're gonna see you have a lot of options. And so the options are %a, lowercase a, which gives you the weekday, %a, which is the weekdays in full name, and so on. So each directive gives you something. So I'm gonna be using this directive here, and also this function to format the output of my date. So this is very extensive. There's a lot of options. So I will not be using all the options, but all I want to do here for now is to show you what's possible to format for your date. So I'm going to go back to the code now. So here I'm printing the date. I'm going to run this code again just to show you that I'm printing the date. The date is very simple here. And now I'm going to print the same date, but now format it. So the same date that I'm printing here, I'm going to print here. But now I'm going to use the string format time function. And I'm passing here a couple of directives. One is the capital Y, then a dash, followed by a lowercase m, and a dash, followed by a lower letter D here. And that tells me just to print the year, the month, and the date. Now, this here happens to be the default way to print, but we can change here. Maybe you want to put a / instead. And then you print your date with /. Or you can add things too. So let's add the comma and then %a, lower a. So now I add the day of the week. If I put in capital A, now I add the full name. Or I can also add the letter B, and that's for the month, or capital B if I want to add the entire month, and so on. So all these directives right here give you some kind of formatted value from the date. And again, if you go to the website, you can see that there are a lot of directives here that you can use, and you can pretty much get any information you want. All right, so let's move on. So the next topic is time. I'm going to delete this for now. The time can only hold time and nothing else. It cannot hold a date or a year or anything. It's just time. And time is very, very similar to date. The way you format is very, very similar. So to create a time, here I'm creating a lecture time. You just pass the time, which is the hour, the minutes, and the second. And then you can print the entire time, or you can print the hour, minute, second, and microsecond. Here's what you have. So this is crazy similar to the dates, with exceptions that one works with the date and this here works with the time. And you can use most of the functions and most of the functionalities as well. All right, so let's move on. The next topic is going to be the date and time. If you look at the date and time, it's also crazy similar to the date and also to the time. But the difference now is that date and time covers, well, guess what? Date and time. So it's a more complete structure here for your data. And because of that, obviously you can have the year, the month, the dates, hour, and so on. So here we have everything. And if you run this, you get all of your data right here in the bottom and everything you want. And obviously you can also format this, or you can add time or decrease time, or whatever you want to do. So the only main difference here is that this one has a lot more information and it's a little longer. So I'm gonna write some code here just to move the date time for next year. And this is very similar to what I did a little while ago. So I get my party time for next year, and then I'm recreating the date and time. And when I pass the parameter, I'm passing the current year plus 1, and then all the rest of the information from before. So by doing so, I recreate the date, but I add 1 year to my date. So instead of being 2021, now it's 2022. All right, so I'm gonna do a little bit of cleanup here, but I'm still creating the same 2021 date here. But now I want to do a calculations of the number of the days until the party. So here I'm assuming that the party is next year, 2021. So the current time when I'm recording this video is November 8th, 2020. And I just want to calculate the time from today to when the party happens right here. First, I'm gonna get a date time, and then I'm gonna get today's date, which is November 8th, 2020. Then I'm creating a variable here, and the magic comes right here on subtracting the my party, which is a time in the future, with today. And then whatever calculation I get out of this, I'm gonna use the dot days, and this gives me the days between when the party starts and today. And then I just print it right here. So then it's 79 days until the party. All right, so all these three date and time, they work very, very, very similar from each other. The only thing that we're missing now is to talk about the time zone. Time zone gets a little complicated here. So I'm gonna do a cleanup here, and let's start talking about time zone. To work with the time zone, you need to install pytz, which is Py time zone. And to install the Py time zone, you're gonna use this command here. So I'm gonna copy this command, then I'm gonna open a command prompt. I'm gonna paste the command, so it's pip install pytz. So now this tells me that it's now installed, successfully installed. So I can close, and now I can import the time zone here after I install. And now I can start writing some code. Right, the first thing I want to do here is to create a time, and to do that I'm going to use the datetime, and then I'm going to get the time zone of UTC. Now UTC time, so if I look at the UTC time right now is 18:47 and 20, and it's Sunday, November 8th at UTC time. So I want to create a time of UTC, and that's what I'm doing here. So I'm gonna run this code. All right, run again. Right here, the UTC time says it's November 8th and it's 18:47 in UTC. And if I go to the website, sure enough, yep, 18:48, 1 minute difference. That's because I ran the code a little bit before. But if I run again, it gives me 1848. All right, good. Now, once I have this time here, and this time is now aware of the time zone. Remember, the dating time that I created in the past here on this video, they were not aware of the time zone. So this one here, this time UTC, now this time is aware of the time zone. Now, in order for me to change this to other time zone, I'm going to first create a couple of time zones here. This function gets me a time zone, and this parameter right here, it's the time zone for New York. Now, with this time zone, I can create a time that's for another time zone. So in this code here, I'm getting the time in New York. And in order to get the time in New York, I'm going to get the time in UTC. Then I'm going to get the time zone in New York. Then I'm going to print the time in New York. If I run this code now I have the time in New York. So New York time should be 1:50 and 16. So I'm going to go back here to my time and date website, and I'm going to search for New York. And sure enough, New York is 1:50, which is 13:50 in military format. This time zone here is New York, but I live in Seattle, so I'm going to create one for Seattle. And there is no time zone named Seattle, but the time zone is Los Angeles. So I'm going to create one for Los Angeles. And by the way, if you want to get a list of the time zones available for you, you can just write a quick code for this, and we will print out all the time zones available for you. So I'm going to write a quick code for this here. So for that, I'm going to create a new file just because I do not want to mess up my current file. And then I'm going to print everything. So here, I'm just going to import all time zone sets from the Python time zone, and then I'm just going to print all the time zone set here. And here you have all the sets that get printed. So there's a lot of time zones here, and then based on these, you can pick the one that you want. Or obviously, you can also search the internet, and I'm sure you're going to find all the time zones available for you. All right, so let's go back to the code. So in this case here, I'm choosing the America Los Angeles one. And then after that, I can just create the code for the time in Seattle. And then finally, if I run this program, I can now get the time in Seattle, which is now 10:53 a.m. on November 8th. All right, so that's all for this video. Thanks for watching.